Kia ora koutou. I'm Olive Jones from the University of Waikato in the North Island of New Zealand. Today I'm going to present a summarised version of an article I'm currently working on. It's also the basis of my doctoral thesis. My particular focus is on the communities that either arose out of or were profoundly influenced by the alternative lifestyle or counterculture movement of the 1960s and 70s, though in New Zealand it's more like the 1970s and 80s. We're a wee bit behind the rest of the world, being down. In Sargison and Sargent's 2001 survey of more than 50 intentional communities in New Zealand, they assert that we have more per capita than any other country in the world, and that an unusually large number of them have lasted 20, 30 or 60 years or more. This presentation introduces three long-established New Zealand communities and discusses some of the ways that they have changed and evolved over time, particularly as a consequence of their foundation structures and underlying ideologies. These communities all operate under the legal entities of charitable trusts. The youngest one, Tui, is 26 years old, and the oldest, Riverside Community, is approaching its 70th anniversary. My research draws on extensive interviews with communards and ex-communards, as well as insights gained through my own experience of living communally from the mid-1970s until the early 1990s. I was a founding member of Renaissance, which is the third community I'm going to discuss today. Tui Community in the South Island of New Zealand was founded in 1984. The land is owned by the Tui Spiritual and Educational Trust. In 2001, Tui was considered by Sargison and Sargent to be one of the most stable and best organised intentional communities in New Zealand. From the outset, it's had a predominantly Western European membership, particularly German. Many of its members have professional backgrounds. They have a high degree of economic and personal autonomy. They own their own homes, which they can sublet or sell. They generate and retain their own incomes, and they can choose the degree of involvement that they want to have in community affairs. In 2009, when I conducted my field work, around 30 to 40 members lived in 20 self-contained households spread over 125 acres of bush overlooking the Tasman Sea. The community also, an area of land adjacent to the sea, has been developed into an event centre where some members run courses for permaculture and personal development. The community also owns a highly successful business enterprise called Tui Balms and Waxes that employs 10 members. It sells its products throughout New Zealand, has distributors in the United Kingdom, and runs a mail order and internet service internationally. A key element that Tui share is an interest in personal and spiritual growth and a desire to create what they call a living, working example of a community that fosters these values. Tui Community started out with a strong emphasis on community interests over those of individuals, but it has evolved to the point where it now describes itself as a blend of an intentional community and a village. Members opt to be either part of what they call family community, which includes people who want to live and work collectively, or extended community, for those who prefer to live more separately. This change was implemented to address a steady decline in community involvement over a long period of time. This decline was identified by members as being mostly triggered by the departure en masse of the community's children around the year 2000. 16 of Tui's children were born in a 4-year period between 1979 and 1983. One member described them as the community glue. They all left home in a very short space of time, leaving the community experiencing what they called a collective empty nest syndrome. This heralded a new era in parents' lives, with many of them spending more time away from Tui to pursue other interests. However, the community remains dynamic and well organised. One of the key elements that has contributed to this continued vitality is their ability to collectively identify issues and put practical changes in place. The emphasis on personal growth and effective communication processes has helped them to hone their interpersonal skills and to successfully negotiate change. This has been aided by a system of discussion they call tukis, which stands for a mixture of hui, tui and talking. Hui is a Māori word for meeting or gathering. Tukis involve the whole community staying together in a retreat situation for 2 or 3 days to discuss issues and to generate solutions. Once they decided to create the extended and family community groups, the majority of the long-established members opted to belong to, you guessed it, the extended community group. One member expressed his disappointment that, quote, as soon as the door out was created, there was quite a rush for the door. This left mostly the younger and newer members in the family community group. While this change has produced its own set of issues, the process demonstrates Tui's ability and willingness to address and accommodate the changing needs and wishes of its people, thereby, according to one member, avoiding falling into the old decline phase of the cycle that he believes so many other communities in New Zealand have. About 2 hours' drive from Tui is Riverside Community, by far the longest surviving intentional community in New Zealand. It was founded in 1941 by a group of Christian pacifists, and from the beginning their philosophy has been based around equality, including shared income and a rejection of private property. Riverside's single core principle of equality of income has a fundamental bearing on the culture and the identity of the community, from its preoccupation with generating enough money to support its members and the high degree of interdependence that this fosters, to the types of people who are attracted to joining. The community has consistently supported itself from its own efforts for nearly 70 years. Income is drawn from several sources, but currently the main revenue earner is a dairy farm. There are also several small business ventures, including an organic pear orchard, a mechanical garage, a community centre that is hired out for events, and a cafe. Most of these small enterprises are operating at a financial loss, and the community is struggling economically. Membership has been steadily declining for the last 15 years, and it currently stands at 21, 4 of whom are elderly. The existing members are ageing. In the late 1960s, a similar decline heralded a change that Sargison and Sargent described as, quote, the single most important issue in Riverside's history. They refer to the community's decision to drop the requirement that members must be practicing Christians, because by the early 1970s, most people who expressed an interest in joining Riverside did not identify as Christian. As soon as the community relinquished this requirement, membership skyrocketed to its highest ever point of between 40 and 50 members. Sandra is one who joined at that time. She said, in the 70s, our generation, the alternative lifestylers, flooded in. A lot of the houses were built in that era. They all filled up with people. Then slowly that movement drifted away, as it did in most communities, and we were left with not enough members to fill the houses, and so we've drifted into tenancy. It totally changes the dynamics of the community. It's left us with less people to work the place, less people who are a cohesive group. Currently, almost half of the community houses are rented to non-members. While bringing in much needed income, the introduction of tenants has created a new social distinction within the community. Tenants are autonomous, they're financially independent, and they come and go as they please, rather like Tui's extended community. Members, on the other hand, are highly interdependent, work in the community enterprises, and live on a modest allowance. Some members feel that having tenants living at Riverside is destabilising and raises questions about the benefits of membership over tenancy. The issue of an ageing and declining membership, combined with unprofitable business enterprises, is putting considerable pressure on Riverside. But the long-established and mostly ageing workforce lack the necessary entrepreneurial and innovative skills to address this situation. Colin, who's lived at Riverside for almost all of his 63 years, manages the farm. He believes it's inevitable that at some point in the near future the community will have to reconsider its economic arrangements. But he spoke of the general reluctance to take this step, saying, "It's not just about pooling income, we've created income together. The fear is that if we change our economic structure, things will fritter away and we'll lose our identity and become just a bunch of people living in a nice place, doing our own thing," which has really happened in most other communities.